would like to come back at 3:30. I said, uh,
You're like, no,
all
but if
right.
that's what you gotta do, I guess.
Right. If that's what you're telling me, that's where you didn't give me the response that I wanted to hear. So yeah. Coming up on a Monday OGP. Are you hip to the news, my friends? What about that starting line and expectations for the big dollars being spent in the off season and the great debate, bagels or pizza? It's all coming up right after the theme music. Yes, it's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where, of course, we are your hosts over here, Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets on the Locked On Nets podcast with my boy Doug Norrie. And over there, the season generational ticket holder, lifelong New York football Giants fan, healthy, wealthy, and wise, Andy Makowitz.
Adam, I'm hearing that you're a little bit on the mend right now. I just want to make sure that the listeners know when you're playing hurt or injured and you're powering through it. I think
Right.
it's commendable, my friend.
Yeah, I'm working out of one eye right now. Got a little something going on in the left eye. Going to get it checked out. Not going to be a problem. Going to power through. But is there a world where this week is about eye patches? I think that it's fashionable, and they could make a comeback. So keep your eye open for that. The bottom
The good
line
news,
is though.
well,
Yeah,
Adam, I was just going to say the good news is you'd already have your Halloween costume ready to go, but midsummer, so you wouldn't even need to change very much from your regular outfit at that point.
I believe in preparedness, right? Why wait until October 25th to get your costume lined up? Just wear it for the summer, see how it feels, and I'm sure that sweat would just be fantastic behind there. Bottom line is though, friends, we're coming in. Obviously, we got a little bit of time here before training camp's going to kick off. We've been doing some of our reviews, expectations based off of storylines out of OTAs and going into training camp. But there's a couple of things worth noting here, and Andy brought up a good conversation before we hopped on. The first, though, is, as you may have heard at the top, are you hip to the news, Andy? And do you get the play on words that I'm working with?
I think that I do. Does it have to do with any type of injuries, my friend?
Keyvon Thibodeaux. They officially said it was a hip injury. That's what he was dealing with during the OTAs. The expectations are that he's going to be ready for training camp, obviously. And maybe, injury could be a little bit, overstating it a little bit. It's a dealing with a hip situation. Do you really, the only reason why I bring it up is obviously the thing you don't want to see, not just from a young player standpoint, but from a New York Football Giants organization standpoint, one that has a track record of struggling with injuries, whether of their own fault or just flukiness. Does it concern you at all when a rookie comes in and obviously a prized top of the draft rookie and he immediately has a little something?
Well, are you talking about Kadarius Toney or are you talking about Keyvon Thibodeaux? Like which one of the first round free agents or first round draft picks are you talking about? Of course.
I see what you did there. That's nice.
Yeah, you like that, right? Much like you were hip to the news, I'm hip to the puns as well.
Huh.
So obviously you don't want your first round picks getting knocks or dings or not being out there. Kayvon, because of the injury, missed a lot of the mini camp and some of the
Mhm.
OTA stuff. But as Dan Dugan kind of wrote out, he said it's not a very serious injury. Like if this was something that could linger into week one of the season, obviously you'd have much more concern. Right now, we've got a few weeks until training camp. For me, it's very simple. Just get him healthy. Make sure that every decision you make between now and week one is actually a decision that benefits the Giants for when they get out there eventually.
I'll pick that right up from where we left off there. That was the eye doctor moved up my appointment. You finished with like not as big a deal, obviously, as long as he's healthy for the year.
Just focus, Adam, on Kayvon Thibodeaux being healthy for week one of the season.
Yeah, that's all. That is all that matters. And also, I will just like point out that while it's a small injury, something about it being a hip I don't love, right? Like something about like a hip, because especially for an edge rusher where you want to be dipping and getting your shoulder down. Like as long as I hear, I don't want to training camp is smooth and he looks healthy and he's ready to go, right? Like that's all I want to hear. But what I don't want to hear is like throughout training camp, yeah, so we're just going to kind of keep an eye on him. We're going to down his reps a little bit here, right? Like, you know what I mean? We're going to put him off to the side a couple of days. Like, I wanted to, and you quote unquote, nursed him through OTAs in order to get to that point. Fine. Like that's fine then. Maybe he could have been out there doing things during OTAs, and this is how you got him 100% healthy going into training camp. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on it, but hopefully everything works out there. Quickly before we get into, you wanted to talk a little bit of offensive line, but we're injuries, expectations for players. Do you think that you and I should just pop our shirts off here before training camp gets underway and kind of set the expectations for what people can anticipate from the podcast going to the regular season? Because Saquon Barkley's been doing that. And I think he certainly is setting a gold standard. Everyone's very excited about his football production based on some of the oily and ripply body parts that he's showing off.
This is just the start of the revenge tour for Saquon Barkley. You could tell that he's like, I'm going to get myself in the best shape humanly possible. I'm also going to make sure that people remember that I'm a freak athlete with huge quads and I am just like a superior, like, running back in this league. Everyone seems to have forgotten it because of the injuries and the play calling and Saquon
So
not
you buy
necessarily
into the
doing.
photo hype though? Like you're down with the photo hype?
No, but as a Giant fan, I get excited anytime like listen, they do the same thing in the NBA, Adam, as you know. It's like Carmelo Anthony's going into like his 20th season. There'll be some like 40-second montage of him hitting jumpers or like fadeaways, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm in on the Carmelo Anthony debate.
Right.
Like it just gets you hyped up. For me, it's just, is he healthy? Is he looking explosive? And are they utilizing him the way that they should? And all those so far are yes so far in the preseason. So for me, it's a little bit different than all the other preseasons because he is healthy. He does look good, and they are using him at in different ways, not just throwing him into the offensive line and hoping for the best.
All right, so go ahead and pop that shirt off.
I'm not the starting running back for the New York Football Giants, Adam, so that's a little different for me.
Well, let's not talk about starters. I don't know if how that plays out on the podcast. Next up, though, we'll keep an eye on what Barkley is doing on the field. Starterinsky. You had an interesting thought process around what was the big splash, the big ticket item for the New York Football Giants this offseason, a 3-year, $18 million deal for a starting right guard, or should I say like a starting right guard, we think, because you're starting to wonder what ultimately is the expectations for Glowinski on this roster.
Well, not only am I questioning his expectations, I'm just thinking the Giants had very limited cap space, Adam. And
Sure.
the one decision that they decided to do is put those cap dollars to work on the offensive line. They went out, they got a backup quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, which was absolutely needed. That was one of the names we wanted. But we also said they needed to address offensive line in some way, shape, or form. They did it through free agency and they did it through the draft. But the biggest signing that the Giants had the whole offseason was right guard Mark Glowinski. And when people hear that he comes from the Indianapolis Colts, you hear the Indianapolis Colts, my goodness, they had the best offensive line in football. They took the baton from the Dallas Cowboys and they've carried it for multiple years. And it's why Jonathan Taylor looks amazing. And then you start to think to yourself, okay, so does Glowinski immediately present a top X guard in the league? Do we not just have to worry about the guard position on the right-hand side? Is it set it and forget it with Glowinski? And I think because he was the most expensive Giants signing, people just assume that he is like a lock to be the leader on that offensive line and the offensive front.
Yeah, I think between Andrew Thomas and then Evan Neal, I think Andrew Thomas is the leader of the offensive line. I think that in the offseason, you only have so much money to spend. You want to make sure, you want to safeguard against whether or not, you're 100% going to get Evan Neal. It all looked like you're going to get a top talent there for the offensive tackle position, but you're safeguarding against that. You're safeguarding against the fact that you're having Shane Lemieux come back off an injury, right? You're going to bring in Feliciano. He's from the Bills, hasn't been a starter though. So you're certainly asking some interesting questions there as well. So do you maybe, overspend a little bit very quickly in free agency to make sure you get a experienced veteran offensive lineman? Of course. And I think that he'll play very consistently inside of this group. Like, I don't think we have to worry necessarily about that aspect of it. I don't view him necessarily as being a leader. I think that the most important thing, like leader in the locker room or like leader in the film room, I think is important, right? Because now you're still talking about third year Andrew Thomas, but then you're talking about, technically third year, but sort of second year for Shane Lemieux, a rookie in Evan Neal, and a guy playing for the first time as a starter at center in Feliciano. So I think having like knowledge is important. So you can be paying a both and, right? I'm paying for a certain level of expectations on the field, and I'm also paying for what you're going to do off the field for all these guys. I think it brings up a more interesting conversation than after that. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, but I think people are misinterpreting Mark Lewinsky's career. I think they think that he was like the beginning of the Colts dynasty on the offensive line, and he was like the
No, I
most
think he was a
important
nice
person.
component there, but you could point to two or three other offensive linemen consistently that you would have said were more important to their success.
Correct. And also like let's also bring up that there are question marks about his path getting to where he is right now. He was not drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. He was drafted in 2015 by the Seattle Seahawks. And after 2 years with the Seahawks, he lost his starting job and was waived. And the reason why he got to the Colts is because he was then claimed the day later by the Indianapolis Colts. And you may
Right.
say, okay, well then he completely righted the ship and he was perfect with the Colts. Well, last year, he actually lost his starting right guard role briefly to Chris Reed. So you have in Seattle, he gets waived. You have, even though he's performing at a decent level with the Colts, he loses his starting job. And then the Giants go out and go pick him up as their big free agent signing. But keep in mind, Adam, the $6 million a year annual salary is still $5 or $6 million less than what they were playing Kevin Zeitler. And he
Right. Right.
ended up not sticking around here. So I think the slam dunk that Giant fans think Lewinsky is, I would kind of put a little bit of a caution sign up to say, like, he's not locked in as the starter for the next 3 or 4 years as the leader of the offensive line, like we were just saying. There's
No.
other players and there's other situations that may change, like what role Glowinski ends up having on this offensive line.
And I think it brings to the point, and I don't know, like check the tape, but I'm pretty sure we've just said, yeah, good, consistent player, great to have some sense of security, right? That's what we thought Glowinski was. I don't think,
Stability.
yeah, we never came in and said, here's your stud, watch out, Pro Bowler. But the other conversation that I think that we have off of this is you've been, we've been discussing Shane Lemieux and how he's come in, he's off the injury, all the coaching staff loves what they're seeing from him. It looks like he is right now going to go into training camp as the starting left guard and start to see how those reps play out. But we're also hearing about Joshua Ezeudu and how the coaching staff obviously likes him. This is their draft pick in this regime. When you draft a third round offensive lineman, is it automatic that they need to start in year one? No, but maybe the picture that I think having this discussion, and we've mentioned it before, but maybe not in these specific terms of, hey, the interior of the offensive line is maybe a lot more fluid than we'd like to think. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I think there's certainly going to be position battles throughout camp. And to your point, Glowinski is a quality player that you can at least set the floor for. But if you start to see a higher ceiling from a younger player, I don't think there's going to be a hesitation from the coaching staff to say, maybe I'm using Ezeudu as the example, but Ezeudu is going to go in there at right guard now because it's just showing up here when we get out on the practice field.
Yeah, and listen, Glowinski was signed by Joe Shane and Brian Dable,
Yep.
and they liked him because of his gap scheme blocking. They liked it because in run blocking he has a very very high grade. And look,
Mhm.
he was the 21st ranked guard by Pro Football Focus last year. So like it's kind of
Okay.
like a weird mixed bag with him though, where he's losing his starting job. He had higher Pro Football Focus grades than Quentin Nelson in the pass block and the run block for the Colts, but not a single front office person in the Colts would say that Glowinski is a better player than Quentin Nelson, who might be a Hall of Famer for the Colts. What I
Sure,
think
role
it says.
expectations, right? What are you being asked to do on a down to down basis?
Right, and we've been just shining the spotlight on Shane Lemieux because he did struggle in pass protection. He did get injured. He's coming off basically a season-long injury, and we think that there's going to be competition between him and Ezeudu. But I'm going to say this right now. I like Glowinski. I think he provides stability, but
Yeah.
he's not making crazy money where if he's struggling 4 or 5 games into the season, that you don't see that fluidity that you mentioned before where Ezeudu may come in. It's not just a stalwart where you're like, Andrew Thomas, he's going to work through the bumps in the road. Like, I don't
Right.
know, 6 million for an offensive lineman who's 30 years old. If we have a young talent which we like that could flourish immediately, like don't be surprised if to your point the fluidity is the thing that you start seeing on the interior of the line.
Of course, keep an eye on it in training camp. And again, like this should be looked at as a positive thing. We know that we think our bookends, Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. We believe that a guy like Azudu in the short or long term can develop into something, right? So you're continuing to check boxes across the offensive line. And let's not maybe get overhyped on the Kool-Aid of Joe Shane and Brian Dable, and that yes, we believe in them long term, but it doesn't mean that everything they're doing day one is going to automatically be the answer, right? So it's a process to work through. Let's hit this quote here and have a little bit of fun on the back end of this episode. A little quick one for you on a Monday. Just looking to have some fun. Being able to play multiple positions in college translates to blitzing off the edge, covering deep, and matching up on routes underneath. Just shows the versatile aspect of myself. Dane Belton came out with that as far as what the expectations are here for him going into training camp. He said he's played primarily back at the safety spots. He has not been down underneath anywhere else, but he believes that once he gets that box checked of playing at the safety, both safety positions, that then he hopes to get moved around a little bit. So Dane Belton looks like he's ready to carve out in training camp a role where they can deploy him anywhere that they want, barring the outside, the cornerback position, but anywhere that they want inside of this secondary to maximize his versatility and value on a game-to-game, down-to-down basis. Should be exciting to me for Giants fans to hear that, because it means that his rep share should be as high as possible coming out of the gate, hopefully, if training camp goes the right way.
It just shows that he's going to find a way to get himself on the field, and he's been
Yep.
showing it in OTA and minicamp. And this quote shows me that he gets it too. Like, he gets what Wink Martindale is going to ask of him, and so he ends up delivering in this. And if people can't tell, we're a big Dane Belton podcast here. I don't know how many other Giant podcasts are like big into the Dane Belton stock, but I'm basically buying all of it if I can right now because of this versatility and the way that he carries himself. I think that he could be the surprise on the defense where you're like, whoa, the Giants got a steal in Belton, relative to where they ended up drafting him.
And when you think about pairing him with an Xavier McKinney, right, the skill set, bringing a little bit of that thump to pair with McKinney, I think is something that you want to have, obviously, in the back end of this defense. But to the more lighter side of things, you said that he's a guy that just gets it. But one thing he doesn't get is bagels or pizza. He said he's yet to get himself out there to the city to enjoy. I think you do it in Jersey, by the way, as well. There's plenty of great establishments throughout the tri-state area. To enjoy a slice of pizza or a bagel. He's only been eating facility food, which, listen, from a football standpoint, you love it. He's in there. He's doing the work. He's not out there joyriding around. He has no time. He said if he gets a couple days off, maybe we'll go check it out. But I ask you, sir, and I couldn't just leave it as like, would you eat a bagel or a slice of pizza? But bacon, egg, and cheese, you want to go pork or egg and cheese, that's fine. It's dealer's choice there. But bacon, egg, and cheese or a nice slice of pizza, if you're walking out there and you need to grab it, what are you reaching for?
Oh, you forgot to mention the Taylor ham, egg, and cheese, Adam, because listen, there's North Jersey,
Sorry,
there's
it's
South.
called pork roll? Yeah.
There's North Jersey, there's South Jersey. We don't discriminate here. Whatever you want to call it, I'm okay with. It's all about preference. Listen,
Oh,
for my
yeah.
life,
Not for
I've
me.
been a very big bacon, egg, and cheese fan. I have. Since I've moved to New Jersey, I have become a pork roll, egg, and cheese kind of guy. That's like kind of what I prefer now. It's just
It is.
it's got that salty, unctuous deliciousness that, like, I don't know. Sometimes for me, sometimes the bacon can get a little bit chewy. It's not crispy, where a pork roll is going to deliver every single time. So that might be controversial in and of itself. But Adam, I got to say, yesterday I was in Manhattan and I had a slice of Joe's Pizza, which I consider to be a top 5 slice. And
Okay.
just the way that they get the char on the outside of the crust,
A little bit
and
crisp, a little bit crunch.
and like it's like not burnt, but it's just like almost like on the edge of that. And to me, I don't know. I love bacon, egg, and cheese because of the versatility, but give me just like Michael Scott said, an authentic New York slice is really what I need.
Yes, and hopefully something a little more authentic than an unnamed pizza outlet in the city
What about
that we
you,
don't know.
Adam? I
Oh,
mean,
I
I'm going
apologize.
I'm going pizza slice. What would be your preference?
I love pork roll, but when I eat pork roll, I eat it like at breakfast with eggs, like, on a plate. I like it like as a platter, as a meal with everything else going on. If I'm getting a sandwich, I'm getting a bacon, egg, and cheese. Like, that is the way that you're going in there. You want to get that egg over medium, so you get a little bit of run, a little bit of yolk in there, and then you mix that in with the saltiness of the bacon. You get a nice slice of cheese in there. If you want to be fun, you throw on some pepper jack, get a little spice. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, but you can do a lot of good things on that sandwich. Whereas, again, Pizza, delicious, love it. If it's done right, it's done right. But I'd say the miss percentages on a slice of pizza are far higher than if you go in somewhere and go like, hey, get me a pork roll, egg, and cheese. Get me a bacon, egg, and cheese. 9 times out of 10, you're walking out satisfied with that pork roll, egg, and cheese. Slice of pizza, you could turn a corner on somebody depending on what's going on there.
You're not wrong. The question is, at their peak, which one is the best? The problem for me is
peak.
Egg sandwiches in the morning, Adam. The only time that I'm eating them is when I had like a late night or a rough night the day before, because man, that thing sits for a while. It's like pizza. You can it's kind of versatile. You could be out by the pool. Someone picks up a pizza pie. You can just like casually grab one, have a good time.
You never go for a float in the pool with a nice bacon, egg, and cheese with just egg kind of dripping down it. You don't just
just like over medium. You're like holding it above your head so that it doesn't get in the pool or on the float.
Yeah.
No, I mean, come on. At its peak, an authentic New York slice, it cannot be beaten. But again, I think that a pork roll would be a close second for me.
Hey, listen, that's what we're doing here for you. It's hard-hitting content all summer long. We'll put together a short list for Dane Belton, who, by the way, his mom is a fan of the show. So maybe we'll get them together for a good slice there out in the city, give them a short list of Andy's recommendations. In the meantime, though, we'll keep an eye on the injury updates. We'll have some more fun, and we'll also talk about some position versatility and expectations for these guys. You can get us over on YouTube. You know that. Get in the comments. Have some fun. The great debate. Bacon, egg, and cheese, pork roll, egg, and cheese, or a slice of pizza. That's what I want to hear. I want to get to the bottom of that this week. So get in the comments for that. Get the podcast where you get those needs fulfilled. And listen, as Andy Makowitz would want, need, and nay, always demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.